All right, welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are diving deep into one of the most critical processes in project management, control scope. We'll be using the official PMBOK guide as our source, but here's the thing. We're not just going to treat it like some dry process. We're going to frame this like a top consultant would, as a core competency for delivering real strategic value.
All right, let's just jump right in and name the enemy. You've probably heard this term before, and it can strike fear into the heart of any project manager. Scope creep. You know what it is, right? It's that slow, quiet expansion. A little feature here, a small tweak there. It all seems harmless at first, but wow, can it completely derail a project.
But don't worry, the PMBOK gives us a really powerful defense against this. It's called the control scope process. I like to think of it as your project's immune system. Its whole job is to keep an eye on things, spot those unapproved changes, and make sure the project stays healthy and, most importantly, focused on what it was supposed to do in the first place.
So here's our game plan for today. We've broken this down into 5 really logical steps. We'll start with the why, the threat. Then we'll build our foundation, get into monitoring and measuring, talk about making the call on changes, and finally, tie it all back to the big picture, protecting the project's value.
Okay, section 1. Let's start with the stakes. Why do we even need such a formal process, right? Well, it's because uncontrolled scope, it's not just some minor headache. It's a silent killer that poses a direct threat to your project's value.
Think about it. Scope creep is like a domino effect, and it's super destructive. One tiny, unapproved change eats up a little budget, so your team has to work longer, which pushes back the schedule. Then people get stretched thin, morale just tanks, and you know what suffers next? Quality. And here's the real kicker. The project starts to drift. It moves further and further away from the original business case, and that strategic value you promised, it gets completely diluted.
So, how do we fight this silent killer? We start by building a fortress, a non-negotiable foundation for the project, and that foundation is your scope baseline.
Now, the PMBOK guide is super clear about this. The scope baseline isn't just one document you file away. No, it's a combination of 3 key components. Think of them like the 3 legs of a stool. You need all 3 for it to be stable. Together, these create your single source of truth. It's the document that says, without a doubt, what's in the project and just as critically, what's out.
So let's quickly break this down. First, you've got the project scope statement. This is the what and why. It tells the story, sets the boundaries, defines what success looks like. Next, the work breakdown structure, the WBS. This is your blueprint. It takes that big story and breaks it all down into smaller, manageable pieces, the actual deliverables. And finally, the WBS dictionary. This adds all the juicy details for every single piece in that blueprint. If you're missing any one of these 3, your baseline has a weak spot. It's vulnerable.
All right, so you've got this amazing baseline. But, it's totally useless if you just stick it in a drawer. The next step is all about active vigilance. You need a system to constantly monitor what's really happening and see how it stacks up against your plan.
And the fuel for this entire monitoring engine, it's something the PMBOK calls work performance data. This is ground zero for pretty much all control processes.
So what is it? Think of work performance data as the raw, unfiltered data coming straight from the front lines. Things like how many hours have been logged, which deliverables are actually done, what are the actual costs so far. The key here is that it's not analysis yet. There's no judgment. It's just the pure data stream from the team doing the work.
Okay, so this is where it gets really interesting. How do we turn all that raw data into actual intelligence? Well, we use 2 key analysis techniques. Variance analysis, that's like taking a snapshot in time. It compares the plan to reality and asks, okay, where are we off plan right now? Trend analysis, on the other hand, is more like watching a video. It looks at performance over time to answer, is our performance improving or getting worse? You absolutely need both to see the full picture.
And here's a perfect, simple example of variance in action. Let's say our baseline, our plan, said we'd have 25 features done by now. But our work performance data, the raw facts, shows we only have 20 complete. That gap, those 5 features, that's our variance. It's a red flag. It doesn't tell us the why just yet, but it tells us exactly where we need to start digging.
Okay, moving on. Your analysis just flagged a variance. Now what do you do? This is that critical point where you have to turn your analysis into disciplined action.
This really is the moment of truth for a project manager. A reactive manager might just say yes to keep a stakeholder happy, Or maybe just say no without any real reason. But a strategic manager, they follow a formal, structured process every single time. It's all about protecting the project's integrity.
And the path forward is actually really logical. Step 1, you detect the variance. Step 2, you figure out the cause and, this is key, the degree of impact. Is this a small thing or is it a big deal? Step 3, you decide if you even need to do anything. Sometimes a tiny variance is fine, you can live with it. But if a change is needed, we get to the most important step. You submit a formal change request.
Now, this is a really important point. The control scope process itself doesn't actually approve or reject the change. Its main output is that change request. That request then feeds into a higher level process, what the PMBOK calls Perform Integrated Change Control. And what this does is it ensures that any proposed change gets looked at from every angle. What's the impact on time, on cost, on risk, on quality? This stops people from making decisions in a vacuum, and it protects the entire project. Okay, let's zoom out for our final section here and look at the big picture. We've gone from the nitty-gritty details of data all the way up to this formal change process. So how does it all connect back to that ultimate goal, delivering business value?
This is what I find really fascinating. The PMBOK is smart enough to know that control doesn't mean the same thing on every single project. In a traditional, what we call predictive project, think building a bridge, control means you defend that baseline with your life. But then you have agile projects, like software development, where everyone expects the scope to change and evolve. So in that world, control isn't about stopping change, it's about managing the flow of work in the backlog in a very disciplined way, sprint after sprint.
So what's the big takeaway here? Why does all of this matter so much? Well, it's this. Effective scope control isn't about just saying no all the time. It's about making sure every single change is a conscious, deliberate business decision where you understand all the impacts. It forces that crucial conversation about trade-offs. Ultimately, it protects your budget, your schedule, and your team. And it makes sure that what you deliver actually links back to the original business case. It protects the value you promised.
And that leaves us with one final thought to chew on. You know, we often pit control against agility, like they're total opposites. But what if that's the wrong way to look at it? What if true agility, the ability to really adapt and respond to change in a smart way, is actually impossible without the discipline and the structure that a solid control scope process gives you? Something to think about. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive into mastering Project Scope.